There is an illusion being cast around you in regards to something, but it's making you feel, it's making you think, it's making you believe that this thing is further away than it actually is. Yeah, literally the Nine of Swords wanted to pop out. What is this illusion regarding? What is this illusion regarding? Okay. For some of you, this is work, a job. There's like an illusion, like something that you've been working on is like further away from you than you're aware of, or like than it actually is. For others of you, this is like, I feel like you've been putting in a lot of work into something, potentially like a connection, and like there's this feeling of like being like putting in all of this work, even like maybe collaborating on something, harvesting some things, but like still feeling like you're at the beginning stages, like it's not, like something's not fully formed. Like, yeah, it's giving like there's something here where you've been putting a lot of work and a lot of effort into doing something. Again, for a lot of you this is probably work. For some of you it could be a relationship. For some of you it could just be like yourself, like putting a lot of work into yourself. However, I am getting here that like you've been working on it for a long time. This is something that you've been putting in the work for. But there's a feeling that like you're still just starting out. We have the World here with the Page of Pentacles and the Seven of Pentacles. It's like you get to reap some of the rewards. However, like there's a feeling of just like being in the beginning stages of this. Yeah, okay. So whatever this is, okay. Whatever this is, it's meant to bring you some sort of emotional fulfillment, mental fulfillment, like just alignment. Because we have the Lovers here from the previous pull. Like whatever you're working on feels very aligned. And it is supposed to be something that gives you a new beginning in like an emotional new beginning, also clarity, like mental clarity, and it is wish fulfillment. So something that gives you mental fulfillment, like it stimulates your mind, like it's something that is very like interesting to you. Hearing like sapiosexual, like if this is a relationship, like this is something that like stimulates your mind but also like fills your cup. Okay, so why, my question is, why is it being kept a secret at this time? Saw the that was the Seven of Swords there. Why is this being kept a secret at this time? I feel like it's being kept a secret, or it's like an illusion, because you haven't learned how to balance your emotions. Like, I feel we have the Knight of Swords and the Knight of Pentacles here. Two very, like, opposite energies. The Knight of Swords is very much so, like, they're rushing in, they're clear, they're like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And the Knight of Pentacles is like, slow and steady wins the race. We're gonna build this from the ground up. Built this brick by brick. I feel like you aren't quite sure how to balance those two energies, right? I feel like you do a lot of, like, behind the scenes work, and like stuff that's not acknowledged, right? Stuff that you don't necessarily acknowledge, but is still putting in the work, putting in the effort towards whatever this thing is. And it's just like, it's very, like, thankless work, right? So, like, you're not getting recognized for this work. You're not getting any awards or medals or anything for this in particular. However, like, you do this. But then it's like, you like to be in this energy of, like, the quick, fast-paced moving energy. And, like, this is, like, where you're seeing a lot of visual projects. Progress. You're seeing a lot of visual project. Maybe somebody's working on a project here, because that keeps, like, I can't, for some reason I'm trying to say progress, but I keep saying projects. So this is someone who likes to see visual progress, like someone who likes to see everything coming together, everything, all the energy that they put towards, they want it to be very visible, they want it to be loud, they want it to be seen, they want it to be heard, right? And I feel like there's not, like, it feels more comfortable, this energy here. And then I feel like when you're in this energy, you feel more stagnant, and I feel like you feel upset. Like, I feel like you just don't feel necessarily balanced in your Knight of Pentacles energy. However, I feel like you've mastered your Knight of Pentacles energy, but I feel like mentally it's very draining, and I feel like you get in your head and you're like, okay, well, I don't feel like there's good communication in these, like, integration with these two sides of yourself, or these two sides of life. Like, I was watching a video about a girl doing, like, a van conversion earlier today, and she was like, or it was, I think, a bus conversion or something like that. But basically, she was saying, like, there were times where she felt like she couldn't finish a lot of stuff because she would have to wait for other things to be done before she could finish these things. So she was only able to do so much, right? And then she had a lot of projects, you know, which were important, like for the electric and the plumbing and stuff like that, that actually didn't show any visible progress on the bus. However, they had to be done, and they were really important to making it work, but she just felt like things were dragging. She would get frustrated because she felt like, you know, she wasn't actually making any progress, even though she was. And there's, like, this almost like a mistrust of timing, almost like a willingness to sit in one energy but an unwillingness to sit in another, or like I said, like, integration. So, like, when you're not in that Knight of Swords energy and you're in the Knight of Pentacles energy, like, being able to, you know, communicate and think things through, like, oh, I'm not actually just like doing nothing. It just maybe looks a bit different at this time. Yeah, I feel like your mindset around being in that what is this? The, 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 Knight of Pentacles energy, I just feel like you feel trapped, you feel, it's kind of toxic. Like, it's like, yes, everybody wants, like, the visual, like, tangible progress, the stuff that you can see. However, like, the stuff underneath is so important too, right? Because it's even, like, with, when you're building yourself up, or when you're doing, like, a lot of self-care, a lot of self-work, inner work, right? The inner work is just as important as how you present yourself, right? So, you know, you can change your style, you can dye your hair, you can get a piercing, get a tattoo, you know, all of these things. But if you're still, like, not happy on the inside, you're not gonna be happy with the outside, you know what I mean? And it's like, while the visible changes are great, a lot of the time the visible changes happen after the inside of work, and the inside work is just as important, if not more important, than the stuff that you can see visually. Because it's like, yes, you need the cabinets and all of these things, you need the sink, but if you don't have the plumbing, then the sink is useless, you know what I mean? So, but I do feel as though, like, you've just been feeling, like, out of touch with yourself. Like, again, with these two energies, they're very, very opposing energies. Like, they're both knights, yes, and they're both, like, in the same headspace, for sure. However, like, again, one is slow moving, one is methodical and steady. The other one is, like, quick, like, let me get in there, let me do this stuff, like, let me make big change right here, right now. We also have the Eight of Wands, which is why I feel like there's not a lot of integration, not a lot of communication between the two parts. Again, I feel like you're someone who might have in the past, or even currently, like, something that is being worked on is maybe spiritual bypass, is what I'm hearing. Is like, I feel like you hear the call, but you don't necessarily answer the call fully. You're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And you kind of just, like, do it halfway, you know? Like, you change the outside, but not the inside. Or you change the inside, but you don't take the steps to make that outside match. Like, you do all the plumbing, but then you're like, I did all the plumbing. Why do I need to put the sink in? It's like, visually, the sink should be there. And then also, like, you can't even use the plumbing if you don't put the sink in, or the shower in, or whatever, you know what I mean? Okay. Explain yourself. I feel like there's a lot being kept from you at this time. Like, I feel like your spirit team, your spirit guides are like, we have plans that they're just, like, not, yeah. They're just not in on them. Their plans could include a person for you, a love for you. But I don't know. I feel like they've been taking their sweet time as well, working on this for you. We have the moon out again. I do have the moon out here, don't I? Yes, ma'am. We have the moon twice. So, like, there's again, illusions. There's illusions. Something far away. Because you're too, okay. Because you know how I said, like, there's there's these illusions or whatever. This is so crazy. Because, okay, again, in this, when I just pulled, okay, so we got, before, we had the Knight of Swords and we had the Knight of Pentacles. In this one, we have the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Pentacles. The Knight of Pentacles is out here twice. And they both came out, like, with the Moon card. I feel like the illusion here is, again, because I said, like, I feel like you feel like something seems further away than it actually is. Where was I going with this? Oh, okay. So the reason it seems further away than it actually is because of the lack of communication between the lack of integration of these two energies. Right? So we have the Knight of Swords and the Knight of Pentacles. I also feel like the lack of alignment between these two energies, because while this energy here is quick moving and like it's also methodical, it's also thought through, it's also clear. This one can be kind of impulsive, and I feel like they're just like not on the same page. You do feel on the same page about this. You're like, yeah, slow and steady wins the race, but you're also, I feel like you have a hard time kind of, you know, which way do we go? Are we impulsive with it? I feel like you operate on two different levels. Like, yes, you can go quick and like things are falling into place and things are aligning, but I also feel like you can also be like someone who is impulsive and just goes for things. And because your fast moving energies feel a little bit more chaotic, and I feel like maybe you are someone who is used to being in chaos, but also feels as though that chaos doesn't, I feel like you're used to chaos, meaning like everything's gonna take a lot longer because you have to clean up somebody's mess or clean up all this stuff. Like everything's gonna take a lot longer, and you're not used to controlled chaos, which is why these two are different, which is why we got two different, they kind of have the same vibe. They're kind of quick moving, fast moving energies, but they're different vibes, right? Like at their core they're different, but they still have kind of the same like quick moving, fast, like decisive, almost impulsive archetype. And I feel like because you have existed, I think mostly in this like Knight of Wands energy, which is like more impulsive quickness and more like not thought through, not planned, just like, yep, right here, right now. And I'm feeling like this could have like not even been your doing. Like you could have been in a relationship where this was like, you had someone dragging you every which way. You could have, you know, grown up in a household where your parents weren't stable and weren't reliable and you were being drugged every which way, which is where you learned this, but you also didn't necessarily learn controlled chaos. And so now that you're in the energy of that controlled chaos, you're thinking it's this, you're thinking it's impulsive, you're thinking it's crazy, and because there's that disconnect of like, you're not realizing, you're not open to the idea that like you can have that controlled quickness, that controlled chaos, that like movement. You're thinking that your goals are a lot farther away because every time you were sucked into this energy, everything happened so much slower. Like you had to fight every step of the way. And this is definitely something that you learned when you were younger, is that like for every little bit of good that you had to fight and struggle and, you know, kick and scream to be able to achieve and to be able to hold any goodness in your life. Like that is what you have learned throughout your life, not even just childhood. Like this could have been something like, you know, adulthood, or, you know, even when you were a teenager or whatever, but just like you have this idea in your head because everything that you've gotten, you've had to fight for And so you're like, I can't just make clear, decisive, like quick movements, even though this is your energy. This is what you learned from being in this energy. You learned the Knight of Pentacles. You learned the patience. You learned the I was gonna say practice, but I'm hearing like practical pursuit. You learned the practical pursuit. You learned the patience. You learned all of those things. It was the wrong one, but you learned all of those things. However, like, you have this idea that like ease cannot exist. Like, you have to always exist in this. And then you also always have to be like fighting. Like, it has to be chaotic. It has to be like, it has to always be difficult, which I think is why we have the Five of Pentacles and the Five of Swords here. It's like you always have to fight and like just have to win. You have to win in order to make your point, or you have to win in order to be heard, or you have to you have to this and you have to that, and it's just like frustrating for you, I think. And you haven't realized that like this has changed for you. Like, you're not in that same position. You're not in that same position. You have the belief that you are the emperor, or potentially there has been some emperor who has caused a lot of conflict in your life. And I feel like if this is a separate person, they have been removed from your life. If this is you working on that energy of like, you are no longer this person. You no longer exist in this energy. I can see here that you literally, the Empress came out earlier, is like you exist in this energy. But I feel like there's like some illusion that you exist as this emperor in reverse here, and you were never even the masculine energy. You were never even the emperor. And maybe you dealt with a lot of emperors who made you think and feel like you were the problem, like you were this person. Like, especially like say you had a partner who was really bad with money, and you were always trying to budget and plan or whatever, and they just like couldn't help their spending, or didn't control their funds at all. So you ended up having to use your funds to kind of supplement, or pick up the slack where they weren't, right? And so that made you believe like, oh, I'm really bad with money because I never have money, and I'm always struggling because I never have money, and I can never do this and I can never do that. In reality, like, and maybe even your partner told you that too, but in reality it was them. It was like they weren't budgeting, or they weren't planning correctly, and then you had to pick up the slack, which is why you were down and out. It wasn't anything that you did. You were planning and budgeting so that you could pick up their slack, because you knew that there was going to be some. And so like you were convinced that like, oh, I'm terrible with money, or I'm a terrible person, I'm a horrible person, like you had these beliefs, whatever the case is for you, but you just had these beliefs that like, this is my energy, and that is an illusion. That is an illusion. You are actually the Empress. You are not the Emperor. You were never the Emperor to begin with. You were never supposed to be the Emperor. You were never the Emperor. You were always the Empress. That is an illusion. The fact that you don't believe that you can exist in a controlled chaos, and that you have to fight and work and like kick and scream for every little like ounce of happiness that you have, that is an illusion. The fact that you feel like your happiness is like decades and decades away, that you have to keep working and keep doing all of these things. If you just have to grind, like grind culture, that is an illusion. The fact that I feel like part of you feels like you don't deserve to be loved, and I feel like you might have a lot of boundaries up around your heart, because you feel like, well, if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. That is an illusion. The idea that you're indecisive, the idea that you don't know what to do next, that's an illusion. The idea that your happiness is super far away, that's an illusion. We literally have, that's so crazy. I was about to mention that. We literally have the 10 of Cups that came out with that last draw, of the Golden Girls Tarot. The 10 of Cups just fell out. Like, that, it's an illusion. The fact that you think that you can't have it. you may have thought at some point that you were not, like, that you, again, going back to, like, having a toxic partner, you may have thought that you were not emotionally mature or emotionally available, or like you may have thought that, like, you were immature. You, again, like, that's an illusion. You were not the problem. You are mature, you are loving, you are open, you are kind. Like, and I feel like all of this stuff you know intuitively, but it's like you don't want to be too full of yourself, or you don't want to be delusional about these things. You're like, man, like, am I just, like, being delusional? Am I just, like, saying shit to say shit? You know, that's so crazy that I keep turning it that way. I never meant to do that. But you're like, I feel like you don't want to, like, toot your own horn. Or, and then I also feel like, on some level, like, you feel like it might jinx you. If you, like, if you're able to see it. I feel like there are, like, blessings coming in. Ooh, okay. There are, like, blessings coming in from your spirit team, and those you're unable to see, right? Like, there are some things that you're unable to see that are coming in from them, but however, like, I feel like a lot of the not being able to see, or, like, a lot of the illusions are self-inflicted. I feel like you have a hard time just letting things be. Letting yourself be. I feel like you're someone who maybe has to, I'm feeling like Virgo energy, like, constantly has to be perfecting, or constantly has to be, like, fixing something. And maybe that's where some of this, like, illusion energy comes from. Yeah. Your guides want you to know that, like, it's time to, like, wake up. Stop perpetuating these illusions. Like, I feel like you're somebody who uses, like, everything as an opportunity to grow, and your guides are saying, like, we don't want you to do that. We want you to just be. We want you to exist right now. Like, put an end to this cycle of thinking that you have to constantly, like, work on yourself, and we want you to just experience yourself, right? Because I feel like you have such a hard time. Maybe you have, like, a negative self-concept, and part of that is because you've never actually experienced yourself. And, like, you might be the type of person that is like, oh, like, they couldn't possibly like me, or they couldn't possibly this, or they, you know, like, the type of person who has a hard time believing that somebody else would like them or care for them or whatever. And that stems from the fact that you've actually never spent that much time with yourself. And I don't mean in a sense of, like, you know, doing hobbies and stuff like that. Like, I don't feel like you take the time to actually recognize how cool you are. Like, you don't give yourself, like, you're making everything an opportunity to, like, work on yourself and to get better and to, like, evolve yourself, evolve your person, which just happens naturally, by the way. You don't allow yourself to just, like, if you're going to a painting class, you're not just going because you enjoy painting and you thought it would be cool and you thought it would be fun. You're like, no, because I need to get more hobbies, and, like, I'm getting more hobbies, I'm learning how to paint, like, these are the boxes it's ticking off for me. And, like, it's just, like, very, like, analytical. And, like, you don't really feel much. Like, I feel like you need to get back into your body. I feel like you are probably, like, back pain could be significant, like upper back pain, mid back pain, a lot of grief stored in the lungs, stiff shoulders, stiff neck. Like, you're someone who's very rigid and somebody who's like, it has to have meaning, it has to have a plan, and you just, like, don't just let stuff be. And that's what your guides are wanting you to do. You're like, oh, happiness is so far off because I got to do this, this, and this, and I have to integrate this, this, and this. Like that energy that you're trying to integrate, the swiftness, like that integration that needs to happen is just being, right? The Knight of Swords has already thought the stuff through. The Knight of Swords trusts himself, right? Like the King or the Knight of Wands, yes, sometimes they can be impulsive, but at the same time, like, they're just going with the flow. Whereas the, like, I feel like you don't necessarily want to be in that energy. But the Knight of Swords, yes, they move quickly, but that's because they trust themselves and they trust their truth and they trust the clarity that they already have, right? They're not figuring it out as they go. They're not analyzing everything and they're not like writing down a checklist. No, they're taking action. They're moving forward. And I think that's what Spirit wants you to do at this time. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much. And if you want a personal reading, that's linked in the description. Yeah. Bye. Love you.